Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and in an effort to adhere to the health and safety public rules, we are using remote technology for some of our segments. As the information on the coronavirus outbreak is rapidly changing, we will be keeping you updated in future segments.
Hi, I'm Anthony Sarmiento, Managing Editor of the CPA Journal. Joining us for this segment of our Voices of the Profession series is Orume Hayes, a member of our editorial board and a member of the NYS's CPA Board of Directors.
I had the privilege of hosting a town hall meeting for the New York State Society of CPAs as a tribute to the CPA Journal's 90th anniversary of publication. The panel consisted of CPAs in public accounting arena as well as in private practice, who came together to discuss the evolution of the profession. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, is one of the hot topics touching every organization, and more businesses are starting to focus on it. There are lots of discussions on this topic, but there is also a lot of confusion, not only as to what DEI entails, but also the necessary steps that a company should take. So what exactly is diversity, equity, and inclusion? Diversity may be considered by some as something that's easy to define. But if you ask someone to define diversity, you may actually be given an array of open-ended responses, all of which would be correct. Some will argue that diversity is differences amongst groups of people that relates to race, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, socio-economic status, language, culture, religion, or even geographical location. Others measure diversity as a range of different backgrounds, experiences, interests, education, or difference of opinion, while others may simply say dissimilarities. No matter the definition, the common theme is difference, and with difference often comes under representation. Equity refers to fairness and impartiality within a company, amongst employees, amongst communities and individuals. It's social justice. But in order to get to the point of justice, of being impartial or calling yourself or your company fair, you need to understand the issues at hand, the root of those issues, and to learn to appreciate what you don't know. And that brings us to inclusion. This is when people will feel that they can ask questions as to how you are addressing their needs. And you show that you are transparent and willing to transform an existing culture, encourage innovation and change, and ensure that diverse individuals are treated equally and with the respect that is deserved.
With the recent social unrest in the country, many firms have issued public statements on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but these statements may not be enough. How do we alleviate the challenges that minorities face in the workplace? Kimberly Ellison-Taylor, Executive Director, Finance Thought Leadership for Oracle, shares with us how we can measure success and hold all firms accountable for progress.
I think it is a collective responsibility. I think there's something that we can all do individually, and I think there's something we can do from a firm perspective. Individually, I think we have an opportunity to be allies. We need everyone to be as trained and as educated as possible, because what happens is this. I think firms and probably a lot of individuals think that as long as it's not overt, and someone actually doesn't say the N word or say some other word that would be derogatory, that it's not under the technical definition of racism through behaviors and actions, and also what's said that makes it very uncomfortable for them to want to stay. And so firms should absolutely take a look at the training that they've been giving. I don't know if the training is sufficient. I think that we have done what I would call drive-by training. It's usually, in some cases, 20 minutes. It's online. You could probably finish it without even going through a single exercise and get 100%. Yet, if we look at the news, Many of the instances that we see playing out, and especially with the number of individuals that have been calling the police on Black and African Americans, those are people who no doubt went through those same trainings. So the question that I would ask is, where did they fall short? Where is the disconnect between what people actually say and what they actually have been taught? Because there's something there that we need to explore, and firms have to be willing to say, we can't get to the year-over-year competitive advantage to maximize our firm value and the services that we provide to the community if we don't mirror and look like the greater at large community. And I know that people are saying, well, Kimberly, I don't want to pick a side. I don't want to pick this side or that side. And what I would say is that I want you to choose the human side. There is a human imperative. There is a business imperative. And firms have to very carefully look at their data and also journey map the experiences from recruitment through promotion, through all levels of interactions with their minority colleagues, and see, and don't be afraid to ask, what's different here? When we look at the promotion and also the pay, some of those biases that maybe people didn't even know they have will come to the front. If you look at your numbers internally, you will also notice some areas where we could do more. I am by no means saying that we should be changing our standards. What I am saying is that we need to change our behaviors. I ask all the firms, look at your training, review your data, journey map your employees, and also determine if your systems, the way that they've been built and structured, your HR policies, what you're asking for. Are you asking for the right things? Are you measuring the right skill sets? Are you providing the right allyship in order to enable minorities, not just Black and African Americans, all minorities, all diverse groups, to be able to see themselves and have a sense of belonging? So I think there are multiple things at every level that we can do better. And I hope that everyone is taking a look at what's happening around the country and filtering out the messages that are divisive and really focusing on how inclusion is our strategy that we should be employing going forward.
In 1969, the AICPA formed the Minority Initiatives Committee in order to encourage opportunities for and promote the hiring of qualified minority accounting students. Back then, only 4.3% of minorities entered the field of accounting, and astonishingly enough, in a 2018 article of the CPA Journal, African American students were still not majoring in accounting. Kimberly, who is also a former AICPA chairman, and Carl Peterson, vice president of small firms of the AICPA, share their thoughts.
I think the sequel to that committee is the National Commission of Diversity and Inclusion, and I'm delighted that I get to be the vice chairman. There are a number of factors. One, I think it's because we have a brand perception. I think when we have amazing talent, we need to showcase and highlight it. When you don't see people that look like you, it makes you wonder when the firm says we are an inclusive environment. I can tell you that this is the show me generation and this is the keep it real generation. They're wondering where it is. Love is as love does. If you say that you value diversity and that's important to you, then I should see it on your executive partner team. I should see it in your directors, your senior managers. I should see it in the pipeline that's ready to take the stage of being a partner. Because without those tangible, visible outcomes, everything else we're doing is just a checklist of activities. And our young people are not going to buy into that. And so because, and I can say this for Black and African Americans in particular, although this is my viewpoint, we don't see ourselves there. When I decided at 8 that I was going to be a CPA, I had no idea that there were not as many women and there were not as many minorities. My parents told me I could do anything I wanted to do from the inner city of Baltimore. We need to replicate that encouragement, that empowerment, and that expectation that we all can achieve excellence and we can execute on this plan.
I think there is an awareness and an education piece that we can all participate in. And just, a personal story is that, since I've been at AICPA for the last 7 years, I went twice to visit with intermediate accounting students at the University of Southern Mississippi. And I didn't visit and meet with the students that were part of Beta Alpha Psi. This was before they really had the opportunity to get in there. And all these students had no idea what a CPA really does. And since then, this is almost 5 years ago. And since then, I've maintained contact with the College of Accounting and some of the students. And some of them have said, I didn't ever think the path to become a CPA was something I wanted to pursue, because they have the stereotype feelings of what it was. They didn't have any idea what it was. And it's not just that college or university. They're all over the country. We need to be reaching all these students, and we can all have, if I can get 2 or 3 of them to follow and become CPAs, and 400,000 of my colleagues can do that, oh my gosh, right? We're going to help solve the pipeline problem, and we're going to help solve the diversity issue as well.
Women partners still comprise only 20% of CPAs, and African Americans are at 1%. What specific plans and actions can we take now? Jody Padar, Vice President of Strategy at botkeeper.com, shares her thoughts.
If you look at the diversity just from female to male partner ratio, if you look at the females who are accountants in larger firms, they get so far and they fall off before the partner track. So you can't really look at it from a hiring perspective. You have to look at it from, I'll take it back to the billable hour, because at the end of the day, a lot of times in firms, people aren't rewarded for results, they're rewarded for hours worked. And you're never going to have that diversity if the expectation is a 60-hour work week or a 55-hour work week the whole year long. And I say it used to be tax season, but we know that, tax season goes into after tax season, which goes into whatever season, which it seems like, and realistically, if you're billing by hours and that's the only way you can increase income, then you're not going to have that opportunity to hire people who aren't going to work 60 hours a week. The expectation of a part-time female who's on a partner track is 50 hours a week. So that's just the business model that's inhibiting the ability for people who have diversity to actually raise in the ranks.
Strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, also known as SWOT analysis, is not a new concept. It was created by Albert Humphrey in the 1960s, who developed the approach at the Stanford Research Institute. The idea of the SWOT framework was to help businesses develop a strategy by evaluating their strengths and weaknesses, as well as their opportunities and threats. Strengths and weaknesses refer to internal factors within an organization, looking at available resources in various departments, and identifying areas for improvement, while opportunities and threats are considered external factors that can directly or indirectly influence a business. Performing a SWOT analysis is a simple tool to evaluate your business and can give it a competitive edge, as it shows that not only did you invest the time to understand your business, but you are also open to innovative ideas that came as a result of that analysis.
Edward Arcara, president of the New York State Society of CPAs and managing director of Edward L. Arcara, CPA, shares his thoughts on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the profession.
I think the strengths of the profession itself is specifically is the being a membership organization, in that is the collective knowledge of the membership and the networking that it allows us to do. There are some very smart people that you rub elbows with, and I think that it's important that even on the small firms where you may not have a series of partners or what have you to kick ideas around, it's always good to have a network where you can make a phone call and somebody picks up a phone for you. Some of the weaknesses, and I'm not sure if it's a weakness, but in any scenario, it's what happens at the professions in the thought process in the profession. How does that thought process gets down to the actual members? Opportunities, I think as a profession and a learned profession, we're prepared. We're taught to be prepared. We give our clients, we tell our clients on how to prepare for certain things that would go on, whether it's a recession, whether it is any type of disruption. And we're very flexible and can adjust and improvise in any way, which really would go to show the last 6 months on how well we prepared ourselves. The threats are, tax policy, the business environment, how we always want to encourage business. Our membership relies on businesses being healthy and what we can do, and any type of policies, whether they're politically motivated or whether they are good, sound policies. We always have to react, and there's only so much that we can do.
Carl Peterson, Vice President of Small Firms at the American Institute of CPAs, gives us his views on SWOT analysis.
But I look at the strengths really, and I tie it right back to our core values as being a CPA, right? Integrity, objectivity, competence. I mean, it takes a lot to become a CPA. We've got the education requirements, the experience requirements. I'm not sure there's any other financial credential that really matches our requirements. As we all know, we're attuned to broad business issues across the spectrum, no matter what size of firm you're with. And so who better to advise, Main Street businesses today? We have another core value of continuing education and lifelong learning. And all of these things, I think, culminate to trust, right? Where we are that trusted advisor to businesses, to individuals, really to everybody. Weaknesses, there's a couple of things that I identified. I think one is speed of change. We're not known as a profession to change quickly, especially as practitioners. We used to plan for 5-year obsolescence. And I think with the speed of change, one of our weaknesses is that also that we have that lifelong learning, but we have I think a demographic of members and practitioners who are going to be hit with the speed of change in technology, where they're going to have to relearn, I think, maybe an enormous part of what they're doing as technology infiltrates, what they're working on. Let's jump to opportunities. Much more exciting to talk about opportunities. Clients need us now more than ever. And it's a great time to be a CPA, and I think that's going to continue into the future. And specifically, I'm excited about it because of leveraging technology. Threats, not big on threats, but they're out there. There's, the regulatory environment, I think, is always going to be a threat, as Ed talked about. And I think one of the current things that we see in the wave that hopefully we are advocating to offset, and that is occupational licensure. That's certainly an area of concern that I have. And I think that kind of leads into unregulated competition. Advisors who are going to move into the traditional, I don't even know it's really traditional, but even moving into the advisory space with our clients, who have no history of required professional ethics. There's been talk about, Google accounting services. When is that going to come? Is that going to come? What's that impact going to be?
Kimberly Ellison Taylor discusses her views on SWOT analysis from a corporate perspective and its need by the C-suite executive team.
I think that the public, our members and firms and businesses that we support all over the world rely on us. We have strength in our numbers, our collective wisdom, our ability to work across a lot of different segments, across a lot of different industries. We are providing that second look. We're providing on the ground perspectives that are solely needed or surely needed by the C-suite executive team. But I would also say our greatest strength is also probably one of our greatest weaknesses, because usually it takes shrinking margins and losing customers to be the parents of change. And in an environment and across a profession where we are doing extremely well, we are considered essential workers. That means that we may not be feeling the same pinch in some cases as in others. And I know that depending on where you are in the current environment, that could be different, certainly for what industry or what clients that you serve. But generally speaking, our profession has been considered essential, and many of us have continued to work many, many hours during these uncertain and unpredictable times. I think over time, that could make us a little less aware of the world changing around us, the geopolitical instability, the demographic changes, the evolving customer needs, the needs to actually look at our workforce and how people in today's environment like to work. Now, COVID-19 actually pushed us forward, I would say at least 5 years, and accelerated our thinking on adopting ideas that we said would never work, because we've proven that it can work, because it had to work. Necessity is the mother of invention. And so I am hoping that because of our success, it doesn't make us less aware of how we need to evolve and change to continue to meet and exceed our member expectations, business, shareholder, stakeholder expectations. And so I'm always looking for ways that we can look around corners and anticipate change. And that would definitely be, I would say, a weakness for us. But the good news is that we have plenty of opportunities. There are opportunities to help shape the world. We provide the how. We help organizations think about their business capital, their valuations. We help them structure. We help them with leadership successions, mergers and acquisitions, meeting and complying with regulations all over the world. And so we have many opportunities to step more fully into that space. We have opportunities to use emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning, blockchain, the Internet of Things, cybersecurity, and data analytics. Our customers and clients and business partners are not just asking, they are demanding that we utilize technologies that will create better operational excellence aspects and also drive greater digital intelligence about the business operations and also our clients. And then I would also say, from a threat perspective, they're behind every corner, behind every bush. We should be aware that whenever there is fear, uncertainty, or doubt, there are new industries that are spurring right now. There are people thinking about how they can meet a business need. If we're not going to potentially meet a business need, someone else is going to do it. And so we have to continually evolve our skill sets and bring our people along. People are so important. We have to be a profession that is inclusive so that everyone, regardless of their diversity aspect, sees themselves at the table of opportunity. We are the profession of entrepreneurship. We are the profession of hard work, commitment, dedication, pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps.
Jody Padar discusses what she sees in her organization when performing a SWOT analysis and why, in her view, CPAs are considered financial first responders.
I was thinking about what's the SWOT, right? So we have strengths, right? And when we look at our internal strengths, what I really see and what I saw during COVID-19 was that we really actually rose to the occasion. And we actually became the most trusted advisor, which I sometimes think is the most overused, set of words for the CPA profession. But we really were there, and we were our client's financial first responder. And what it did prove is that automation can't replace CPAs, because when our clients really needed us, we were actually there for them. We were there interpreting. We were interpreting the information that was coming out daily, and it was changing daily. And we were there answering the calls for our clients. We were there supporting them, and we were there helping them through their financial crisis and really helping the economy as a whole. But of course, we do have weaknesses. So we know that CPAs are notoriously slow to adopt, and they're somewhat risk adverse. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think we have to be extremely aware of it. And I think one of the hardest things is our business model is totally outdated, and it's been outdated for a while. The CPA firm's business model was born in the Industrial Revolution, and the billable hour was considered something that was relevant, and it actually had to be measured. But now, as we look to automation and where everything takes seconds, the billable hour is completely unnecessary. And how are we going to change that business model? And we need to, in order for firms to survive. Because the next generation of potential partners, they don't want to buy into a broken business model. And the hardest part is the partner's legacy thinking, where many of our old school firms are built on legacy compensation models that are no longer realistic, and those need to be addressed. And we have management and leadership issues that have to be adjusted, let alone all the technology changes that need to be updated. Pricing of services need to change, and there's so much that needs to change, and sometimes it gets overwhelming. But if there's a silver lining of COVID, it's all the opportunity. It's going to be a renaissance of sorts, and global meets local for even the smallest of firms. The cool thing is that we realize you can work from anywhere, anytime, and you can serve clients all over the country, if not all over the world. But of course, we're going to have threats, right? And I think the biggest threat to our profession, honestly, is the disconnect between old school partners and the next generation of CPAs who are going to be more data-driven than CPAs in the past. We know the education system is changing, and we know that the big four firms are wanting to take their employees through digital education transformation and really about understanding data and how to use it. And then we have all these old school, older, experienced CPAs who have this wonderful wealth of industry knowledge, and they have all the experience, and they have so much knowledge to offer the next generation. And yet, how are they going to connect? How are we going to help those old school partners learn what the wide world of data is and how it opens up to a new world? And then they have to share that experience with the next generation, because data without context doesn't mean anything. And with all these experienced CPAs who could add a lot of business value to their business owners, and then we have all these data experts who we kind of need to figure out where they actually fit into a firm and how we're going to marry the two and really add value to our clients. So I think there's so much opportunity, but we need to kind of pull it all together. And I don't think we've pulled it all together yet. We need to help these firms evolve. We need to help them understand where they're going to sit in the future, especially as artificial intelligence and machine learning take a bigger hold.
COVID-19 affected every profession, and almost every company moved to a virtual platform overnight. One of the areas often discussed is onboarding. Companies are in the process of evaluating their needs, looking at existing staff, and slowly starting to hire. But the onboarding process is totally different from what they were used to prior to the pandemic. Like everything else, onboarding has to be revamped, and new processes and procedures need to be in place in order to be effective.
Onboarding was another topic addressed by the panel. Jody Padar started the discussion by giving her insights as to how local companies are able to onboard new staff and how new hires will become familiar with corporate culture.
Virtual cultures are interesting in and of themselves, and I think it really takes intention, right? So when you think about training people virtually or interacting with them virtually, they really have to step up their game, right? And I would say, like any employee, right? Like it's really hard when you're sitting somewhere virtually and in an old school environment, or I don't even know if it's old school anymore, but in an office environment, right? You would typically walk into that new hire's office and say, hey, how's it going? What's happening? Well, a lot of times when you're virtual, sometimes as managers or as partners, you just forget about that person because, like, out of sight, out of mind. And so what has to happen is the next generation has to be more proactive about reaching out to their managers and their partners and engaging with them to get what they need, because managers and partners aren't mind readers. And when you're not seeing that person face to face every day, it's hard. There is a disconnect there. On the flip side of it, I think it's easier when everybody's virtual versus when you're in kind of this hybrid office environment, because it's hard when half the people are in the office and half the people are out of the office. So what I think the good thing is if everyone's virtual, then everyone kind of puts more intention in it and kind of figures it out, versus when half the people are in the office and half the people are out of the office, because then, you know, there's I think a lot more miscommunication going on. So So I think really it takes intention on both sides, and I don't think it's good or bad. It's just different, and we're all going to have to adjust because COVID's not going away. So, you know, you can be upset about it. You can say, well, this is not the way I want to do it. But on the other hand, that's not really a choice. So we're just going to have to figure it out. And I think the good thing is, you know, we're getting more comfortable with online tools. So hopefully those tools too will evolve more, because now that more people are using them, big tech companies will invest more in those tools. So we'll get better tools. So we're kind of at the beginning of whatever this new normal is.
Carl Peterson gave his views on the topic from a small business perspective.
I think it's a big challenge, I think, for small firms that all of a sudden had to go remote, right? and over the last few years have actually, because so many firms have gone remote or have allowed it, they're finding that they can find staff to work, and it works, right? The technology is there to make it work. But I think what their challenge is, and is that the remote work is super easy to make work from a compliance standpoint, tax preparation, financial recording, financial reporting, and that part of it. And I think what Jody's alluding to is that how do you really manage those people then beyond that? How do you help them develop those skills, soft skills, and have an understanding of business development, the things that maybe you might have in that one-on-one conversation? And Jody's right, you have to be intentional. And I think that's where when I mentioned relearning earlier, that's one of the components of relearning. Those managers and supervisors and directors that need to help develop and have in the past helped develop those young people need to be intentional on how they're going to do it now in this new environment.
The discussion on the evolution of the profession ended with the final thoughts of Ed Arcara and Kimberly Ellison Taylor.
There's always a silver lining in disruption. And that's when things happen. When you get fired from a job, maybe you get the better job and you move on. Something you got to look at when a door closes, another one opens. Well, however you want to say that, you have to look at it with encouragement and saying, okay, what's next? Let's get on with this. It happened. No matter, we can complain about what happened or what have you. It ain't going to change it. So therefore, treat it like a disruption. If it slowed your business up, treat it like a minor recession where you're looking for new revenue streams. You're looking for new services you can do your clients and what have you. Look at how do you expand where it solved a lot of my problems in that it opened up from a geographic standpoint, who I'm going to hire next. It opened up a communication now. It opened up a lot of stuff. And clients are looking for that. And I always say with the business owner, they don't get the pats on the back, or they have to look for the pats on the back. And I try to have them see where those pats on the backs are as going in there and know that they did a good job, that they're employing their people. They have a lot of mouths to feed, and they owe it to their employees to keep that business going and to treat it with respect. It's an asset. It's no different than anyone else's 401k program. You have to protect your asset.
It's time for us to drink our own champagne. I also think of the glass being half full. We have opportunities. I spend a lot of my time talking about technology, and I'm not afraid because I'm going to be prepared. We all have to stand at the intersection of finance and technology. And to the extent that we can apply the strategies, the learnings, the leading practices to people, to processes, to technology and our finances, I think we will be farther ahead than we ever could have imagined. I also want us to reflect that we are considered the numbers people. The data is telling us a number of things about how our profession is comprised, the people, the categories. There are challenges, and we have privilege, because privilege is the very definition of it is thinking there's no problem because we don't have a problem. I encourage all of us to look at the numbers. There is a compelling, undeniable business imperative to inclusion, whether in person or remote. And I would dare say that most of us may not be aware fully of the problem, but I would encourage us, and I know we're up for it, to not stand still with the status quo. Don't be content with letters that was sent out in support. Recognize that there have been two Americas that your colleagues have been living in for quite some time, And I fully expect that if you're allies, if you see something, you are going to say something. We have to live up to being trusted advisors, and we have to be the change that we expect the world to be.